Assalamu alaikum, rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm considering doing a little thing called like Islamic trivia, where I may ask like 10 questions, different things from the deen, from real Islamic academia, from real academic questions in the deen. Maybe ask like 10 questions and just give people the opportunity to, if they want to, answer them in the comments, or the ones that talk to me on Telegram, and they want to answer them if they want to, or if you just want to look them up or ask other people and get the answers for yourself. So I when I was making the video, I didn't want to go in depth about this subject because I understand how some African Americans feel about doing this, throwing up that one and not having any idea or any clue where it really came from. What did it mean when it was originated in Islam? I never did a real in-depth study of it, but if you look into it, you possibly would stop doing it. I'm gonna put it that way. First and foremost, even right now, if you go to look into it, before ISIS was referred to as ISIS, and when you start to see that ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and some of these other groups all started as one group, and then as they started to splinter, and ISIS is a splinter set, Al-Qaeda is a splinter set, when it was like the Taliban. And when you know some of their Al-Qaeda and some of the things that's mixed in with them, but before these groups had names that we refer to, they was all a group, and whatever their purpose was what their purpose was. But if you go and look into it with ISIS, number one of their symbols is that you're a member of ISIS or you down with their clique. And you can even Google this. Is that this one? So this is something that affiliates you and associates you with this particular group and set. This is a very old group. This is a very old set. They've been around since the 60s, the 70s. Although they refer to them as some Sunni groups. You know, America referred to them as a Sunni group. But when you get to learning about them and their origins, you will see they have a lot of Sufi, Shiite, Deobandism in certain aspects of their Aqidah. And due to this beliefs, the blood of some Muslims, whether you're a Shiite, whether you're a Sunni, whether you're a Sufi, some of them make the blood of Muslims permissible, which came from the Rafida, extreme Shiite group that was some of the original groups that started making the blood of the Muslims permissible. So one of their symbols, which has always been a symbol for years, that affiliates you with them, that associates you with them particular group, is that they do this. Now, it didn't always mean for Tawheed and all this other stuff. So just to show you how Bidah grow, and I'm saying you can Google it. You can look into it, and they have started off with ISIS. This is something that ties you to ISIS. Right? Now, years ago, I was in a different city, and I seen somebody take Shahada in a masjid. I'm in a masjid. This was many years ago. And when the person came in to take the Shahada, they told this individual that he had to hold his finger up. Now peep this out. You got to hold your finger up to testify that there's one God and while you taking your shahada. But their indication was, and they made it clear to this person, that if you don't hold your finger up like this while you take shahada, your shahada is invalid. So on an aspect, because to me, it means nothing. It could mean, number one, if you see somebody at a basketball game or they win in a sport, a boxer win and do like this, I'm number one. Do that mean Tawheed? Do that mean that there's only one Allah? Do that mean he's testifying to the Shahada? No, it doesn't. It's just something that's something. You could go buy a big foam finger that's pointing up to number one at a college basketball game, college football game. Our team is number one. I'm the number one person. This right here is just a finger where you holding it up. I'm number one. So you got to look at the origins of this, right? So when they said that particular thing to that person, that you have to do this or your shahada is invalid. Now, due to the fact that because a particular group of Muslims associated themselves with Bilal, I'm not going to refer to what they started calling themselves, but they associated their groups with Bilal. May Allah be pleased with them. Bilal the companion. So there's a story, and when you start to dig into the story, it's definitely not like how they put it. If you read the Sealed Nectar, if you watch the movie The Message, but if you read it, it's a little bit different than the visual they put on in the movies or the shows. So basically, when Bilal was a slave and he was being tortured, right? He was being tortured. He was being crushed. And it was to the point where he couldn't really speak. And they was saying to him, they was wanting him to worship their idols. So due to the point where he couldn't really speak and he was being crushed, he couldn't really get no words out. And he's on his back, he's tortured. And he just did one finger like this to say there's just one God. Not saying this means there's one God, because he couldn't really speak. You see what I'm saying? That didn't mean it was his testimony. He was being beaten, tortured. You understand? So some people who affiliated themselves with Bilal, this particular group of Muslims, right, that came around after the Nation of Islam. So some of them took that and they spread to, when you take your shahada, you got to do it. So now you have some Muslims who feel like when they saying something and they feel like they being truthful as a testament, they got to hold up the one finger. You got some Muslims who, when they wake up in the morning, they feel like when they wake up and they make du'as and they got to do certain things, that they have to hold their finger up. If they not, now the problem is this, because it means nothing. It means nothing in Islam. But when people get to the point where they feel like if they not holding their finger up, when they say certain things like holding their finger up like this, make it valid, now that is a Bidah. Because when you start to say, if you not doing these things, if doing this isn't present when you say certain words, then it's not valid. Now you done introduce something new into Islam. Now you done introduce something new into Islam. So like all the people that I know that do it, from the African Americans, it's something they learned in prison or learned from somebody in prison, and that's that same narrative. It's testimony. It means there's one law. Okay, so like this right here. If I put my hands right here and say there's only one God, there's only one deity, Allah is one. The simple fact that I didn't do this, do that make the statement false? So now, in order for that statement to be valid, I got to do this. You know, Allah is only one. This doesn't make that valid. This isn't from Islam. But one thing that this do as a symbolism, it ties you to a terrorist group. Yeah. To do what that done went through many transitions and many names and many substances to the point that right now that particular group is referred to as ISIS. Google it. Google it. Now, like I said, some of the people from Bidah, that took the name or attributes and affiliated themselves with Bilal, and some of that story, like I say, is so, because it has no origins or any basis in the Quran and Sunnah. There's just many different explanations for why people do it, when you should do it. Some people feel like before you make dua, when you make dua, you have to do it when you make dua. Some people I know, every time they say salam alaikum to somebody, they gotta hold their finger up. And these are things that they was taught in jail. But I'm gonna say this, and these is individuals who don't really listen to scholars, or oh, well, that's an Arab scholar, oh, well, that's a this scholar. You look at scholars in Africa, you look at scholars in India, you look at scholars in Saudi Arabia. Not do you see any real scholars, not people that's just referring to themselves as scholars. You do not see any of them doing this as anything that involves Islam. Take a shahada, it's supposed to be a testimony. This is supposed to mean tawheed, or any of that stuff. You don't see anybody who's highly educated in Islam doing this. They don't teach that you should do it. And then secondly, when you come to that fundamental principle, of course, we're not going to find it in Quran al-Karim. Nowhere. Where is the hadith that the Rasul said, when you take your shahada, when you make du'as, or whatever the reasons, because like I said, being that it has no actual real basis, depending on the person that you ask, and then depending on who put it on the internet, you understand? Because one thing about the internet, people had to download that information into the internet. So a person can download that into the internet with no reference point. With no reference point. Now, one thing about it, and this is what I love about it, and I'm glad it got brought up. And like I said, I wasn't really finna go in depth on it because I know how some people feel about it. It's a couple of brothers, you know, that I got a lot of love for, and I be around them, and they do it all the time. I never do it. I never tell them, you know, because it don't really mean anything. But if they start to say to me, hey, you know, if you ain't doing this when you make dua, it ain't, you know, this is validity, this make it valid. And I'm gonna say, now you on some Batil, now you on some Bidah. You know what I'm saying? Because now you're giving it a meaning that makes certain actions in Islam valid. Like, okay, cool. You want to say this is a symbolism of tawheed. Okay, that's fine. Where do it come from? Did Allah say that? Did the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam ever do that? Did he ever teach that? The people that he taught, did they ever understand it that way? You know what I'm saying? In the best generations of Muslims, did they ever say this means tawheed? Did they ever say this is a symbolism of tawheed? Because the same way as in the kuffar, but let me finish my point. So with the particular groups that picked this up, that attached themselves to Bilal, and they added this to them, but they look at some foreigners and what they do in Islam and certain things that they did that didn't come from nowhere. You know what they call it? Culture. So for these brothers who sitting up here doing this and thinking it's from Islam, no, that's part of y'all part of the black Muslim culture. That's part of y'all, that's culture, B. That's not Islam. Y'all have made that a culture. You may not think it's culture because to you, culture might just mean the clothes you have on or the food. but sometimes the practices, something that's become a commonality, that's, you feel like it's something that you have to do. It gives validity. That's culture, B. Now, like I say, I ain't never seen every hadith. You understand? I'm always open to be educated. But I ain't never seen no real scholars, no matter what they race was, no matter what what we gonna say their nationality. You know what I'm saying? No matter what country they was from in Africa, because it's a continent. No matter what country they was from in Asia, or from the Asia Minor, or no matter where they was from in the Arabias. Students who went to the universities, who went and sat with scholars. I've never seen none of them do it. I've never seen none of it teaching. But the only people who I've seen that teach that, or say you have to say this when you do your shahada, when you wake up in the morning, you gotta do this and say du'as. Every single people that I've seen that taught that and spread that, they was associated with some type of group that was full of Bidah, that wasn't tied to any real graduates, any real scholars. They was tied to something else. Now, like I say, I know some of the origins in it as a symbolization to tie you with ISIS. Sort of like, we'll say a gang symbol. Let's say this is a gang symbol. So if I go to any other city or go somewhere else, I could do this right here, and then that's going to let my other gang members know I'm part of their gang. And then my enemy's able to look at me and say, okay, he not one of us. Just Google it. This is something that ties you and associates you with ISIS. Now, like I say, even with the group who started to tie their name to Bilal, and unfortunately, they won't agree with it, but they dealt with a lot of Ahmadiyans back in the day. They dealt with a lot of extremely deviant groups. Deobandis, Tabligis, and they could have got that from one of them under some false pretenses, and they spread it through the African American communities, not knowing this stuff is tied to groups that's right now today, their new name is ISIS, but their political ideology has been around for a very long time. And you start to see they had these Rafida views. Now, like I say, but this is just me. This is just me. Because I understand what certain things make it a bid'ah. Sometimes things make it a bid'ah when you place a hukum on it. When you start to place certain rulings and certain principles on people, like, hey, when you take your shahada, you have to do this. No, you don't. When you talking about Tawheed, you have to do this. No, you don't. When you telling the truth and you wanted something to be your testimony, you have to do this. If you want to symbolize that there's only one God, like when they took from Bilal when he was being tortured and couldn't really speak, he wasn't doing this as a symbolism to say this symbol means Tawheed. This symbol means there's only one God. He was saying that because he couldn't really talk. He was under duress. So he was just holding up one finger to say, my position hasn't changed. Even with y'all beating me to the point where I can't even really talk and stuff no more. I still only believe in one deity. To the point where they ended up smashing his hand and fingers because he did that. Now, if you want to take that and put something on it, and say, you know, we love what Bilal did, is that, but once you start to say you have to do this, or once you start to say this symbolizes something in Islam, Now you got to prove where it came from. If it didn't come from Allah Azza wa Jal, if it didn't come from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam teaching it, and if nobody from those particular people that he taught and became the teachers ever had that understanding or ever taught that, then I let you know what? It has no place in Islam, because you got to go through your forms of dalil, which is what? Higher form is dalil, how the Quran is supposed to be interpreted. Allah said. Next, Sunnah, Hadith, authentic. Third, Ijma', the way the companions, the one that they taught, what they agreed on, that their understanding was correct from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and what they looked at in the hadiths and what they looked at in the Quran, and from the tafsirs and the circumstances and the sirah and the circumstances of the situation where something came down and they was able to agree on a new ruling, ijma'. Then if you wanted to do some intellectual reasoning, qiyas, because now the times is extremely different. We going from riding on donkeys to driving cars. So now some type of ruling may have to be in there. Now qiyas can come in, but you got to have those four. So you have to ask yourself, before we make this a part of Islam, before we accept this, before we do this and say this means Tawheed, this means that, and not from any deviant groups, where a deviant group put on the internet, this is a symbolism of Tawheed. It's recommended that you do this when you take your shahada, when you make du'as, when you being truthful. Other things that I've heard people that say that do it, in different cities, and a lot of these individuals who come home from prison, you see them, they walk up to you, Assalamu alaikum, Aki. I don't do it back. I don't get on. I don't be like, that don't mean nothing. Now once, if they jump up and say, hey man, why you ain't holding up your finger? When you say la ilaha, why you didn't hold your finger up? Then I'm going to say, well, why do I have to hold my finger up? Why you didn't, when you make dua before you go in the bathroom, before you walk out the house, why you not doing this? When you see the other Muslims riding down the street, why you ain't do this? Why you not doing this? Then I'm going to say, well, why do I have to do that? Why am I supposed to do that? Oh, well, this is what it really means. This is that. I'm going to say, oh, okay, alhamdulillah. Can you show me some dalil for that? What you mean dalil? Everybody do it. That's what I was told. This is what I was always taught. Okay, alhamdulillah. Who taught you that? Oh, such and such. He was the imam in prison. Like an imam that came and visited the prison, or another prisoner who accepted Islam in prison, learned Islam in prison from other prisoners, not to take anything away from them, and they chose him to be the imam? A gang member who's Muslim because it's part of the gang? This imam, what made him an imam other than y'all calling him one, or because he gave the bars in prison? Oh no, he accepted Islam in prison, man. But he was this and that. Okay, alhamdulillah, we ain't talking about his character and how good he was. We're talking about his credentials. Credentially, what made him an imam? Oh, was he argued in it? You getting difficult, move out the room? No, because I'm not having this conversation to be right. Just like right now, this isn't a conversation for me to be right. I've never seen every hadith. I haven't. So if somebody can point out a Quran ayat that insinuates this means Tawheed, or this means one God, this means your testimony, you being truthful, that you have to do this when you make a dua, you have to do this when you take shahada, when somebody get married or take their shahada, you got to hold up one finger and go, Takbir, Allahu Akbar, Takbir, Allahu Akbar. Show me the basis. Go, even if you had to Google it. Not just an empty article with no reference point. Where's the hadith? Where's the athar of the righteous ones from amongst the best generations of the Muslims? Which I'm going to say the Salaf as-Salih. Not wanting to offend people, because some people, when they hear that word Salaf as-Salih, oh, that's that Wahhabi crap. You know what I'm saying? Just like the same thing with the way people starting to celebrate the Prophet Muhammad's birthday. Certain things get introduced thousands of years ago, like what I originally said, with some of the ways these Christians, some of these holidays that they believe in, like Valentine's Day. Do you know the origins of that? Do you know if it was tied to cutting the vagina out of a woman as a form of sacrificing virgins, and that's why they had a heart? Did you know that the heart, the original heart that y'all use as a heart, was a symbolism of a vagina? Why you think it don't actually look like a heart that's in the chest? Do y'all know that original thing was a symbolism of a vagina? So right now you have your little kids, they teaching their kids they eat heart-shaped candies. Y'all don't know that symbolize a vagina? Because y'all done twisted it up into all these other little origins to make it something sweet to make money. This is the same thing with some of these practices, with all these individuals running around talking about Salam alaikum, Ashhadu an la ilaha, wake up in the morning, Alhamdulillah, la 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 akbar, da da da. And if they don't hold their finger up, they don't feel right. They feel like they did something wrong. So, like I say, I done heard all the arguments. I done heard the rhetorics. I done sat in classrooms with people overseas who come from, like, I'm gonna put y'all up on 1 second. Let me get a book, inshallah. Hold on. This man right here, Imam Shawkani. He came from a long line of Shiites, right? Converted them. This man was so cold in the deen that one of the caliphs, when they still had caliphs in Islam, he was basically that caliph's advisor. And in his biography, this was a cold individual. Just like, I'm going to tell y'all something that a lot of y'all probably don't know. Do y'all know that the term Sunni Muslim started off as a diss from the Shiites? Basically, the Shiites used to call people Sunni Muslims, one, to distinguish them from the Shiites, right? But it also was a form of, they viewed them as like a dog. So like back in the day originally, and he's one of the imams that talk about it because he was around. His whole family was Shiite. The whole country and everything he lived in, everybody was Shiites, right? So he was alive at the time when they started to refer to people as Sunni Muslims. Oh, them the Sunnis over there. To be honest with you, kind of like as us black people in America, the N-word. How the way originally us being called the N-word was an extremely derogatory term. We turned around and made it something cool. The Sunnis turned around and made being called a Sunni Muslim something cool. We Sunni Muslims because we follow the Sunnah. But the Shiites, they feel like they follow the Sunnah too. And some of the Sunnah they do follow. But they don't attach we Sunnis to it. We Shiites. So the term, they some Sunni Muslims, started off as a diss. Some of this stuff, you don't know the origins of it. But it could become anything. Just like holidays. Just like things like Halloween. You don't know what type of devil worship and stuff that stuff is attached to. These things for Christmas and all, you don't know. So some of this stuff that people doing and feel like they have to do and encourage other people to do, if you don't know if you can't find the origins of that in Quran, Hadith, and the way the best Muslims that was taught by Rasulullah or taught directly from people that the Rasul taught, if you can't find the basis of origins of some of these things that y'all doing, I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it. And I'm not even gonna say nothing about it until an individual says you have to do this. Because sometimes what make it a bid'ah is the hukum, the rulings, and the different type of understandings that you put on it. Because like I sit down and say, if I see a person at a basketball game and it could be a Chicago Bulls game and they have on a Chicago Bulls jersey and they got one of them big old foam figures that do that, I'm not going to look at that and say, look at that, that means Tawheed. That means Allah's one. That means that's a testimony of your Shahada. Look, when he holding that foam finger up, he's testimony. He's basically saying Shahada and don't even know it. He put that big foam finger on when you make your du'as and walk around. When you wake up in the morning, first thing you need to do is hold your big foam finger up. Now once you start to do that, then I'm going to say, now you're going too far. Now you introducing some new things into the religion. And some people, that's what they doing when it comes to this. I'm just going to be honest. Some people don't even know why they do it. They was just in jail. They seen a lot of people do it. Or they came in a masjid and seen people doing it and they just started doing it too. They never asked why. They just seen some of them do it when they say salam alaikum. Or they seen them do it when they made a dua. So when they said salam alaikum or they made duas, they just did it too. Never asked why. Never asked where it came from. Or they came in and then one of them brothers said, hey, you know when you say assalamu alaikum, you got to do this. You know when you see some Muslims, especially a Muslim that you got love for, you got to do this. And then they just started doing it. You know what I'm saying? Or some old smooth talking cat that probably was attached to the group that attached themselves to the name of Bilal. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, it's just one of those things. It just is what it is. I ain't gonna love you or hate you behind it. As a Muslim, you could do it all day long, as far as I care. If you want to say, hey, this means Tawheed to me, that's fine. Our issue is going to come in is when you tell me I got to do it. You know what I'm saying? Or you telling new Muslims around me that they have to do it. This right here validates my dua. This validates my shahada. This validates my testament. Okay, cool. Because I ain't seeing every hadith, and I'm saying that right now from a humble position. If somebody can show me the hadith, if somebody can show, and it's authentic, it ain't nothing munkar, it ain't fabricated or nothing like that, and you can show me some scholars that's saying, hey, yeah, that means you're supposed to do this, then I sit down and say, okay, now we have some foundation to build on. But other than this is what I taught, this is what's said. And like I say, I've never seen no scholars, and I haven't seen every scholar out of Africa, off the African continent, off the Asian continent, out of the Arabias. But the ones that's not tied to no deviant groups, that's not known for being a deviant and all that type of stuff, y'all got to show me where they teaching that from Quran and Sunnah. Other than that, this don't mean nothing. Unless, you know, you want to say, hey, I'm number one. Hey, I'm the winner. I'm the best. Whatever the kuffar do it, the kuffar do this. You know what I'm saying? Anybody who watch boxing, every time Floyd Mayweather won, or he posing at the weigh-in, he do this. Do that mean he talking about some Tawheed? Oh, well, you know, that's too much. He Muslim, this, that, and the third. Okay, show me the scholars. Show me the best generations from the past, the Salaf as Salih. Show me where they did this, other than some misrepresentation of a story from Bilal when he was being tortured, and that's not what he meant by that. The other Muslims who seen that, and the people who was around who seen that, even the ones who paid the money for him to be free, they didn't start doing that after that happened to Bilal. He didn't continue to do that. You know what I'm saying? When he was able to talk, and he was involved in Islam, and he was calling the adhan. He wasn't calling the adhan like this. When people walked up to him, when he gave dawah, he wasn't salam alaikum. He wasn't doing none of that. But alhamdulillah, man, it's one of those things that just is what it is, and it's something that I say, I ain't gonna love or hate you based off of you doing that. And we not even gonna enter into a different realm of conversation until you say to me, hey, Aki, you're supposed to be holding up the one. Holding up the one for what? Holding up the one for what? You know what I'm saying? I remember back in the day, because I was supporting a Muslim brand, and while I'm at it, Muslimatic.com. Some strong Muslims out of Chicago. They've been getting the youth together, taking them to Mecca and Medina. Right now they're doing a fundraiser to take the young brothers, a lot of the brothers out of O Block, for people who heard of O Block, other areas in Chicago. They trying to take them to Rwanda in Africa, because the Rwandans, how they all started killing each other and millions of people died, and how they got over it. And right now Rwanda is one of the best countries in Africa right now. So they taking them over there to talk to some of the survivors and see what did they do to come out of that mode of killing each other, so that they can start to try to change Chicago and with the Islam. So they have they got Muslim, it's called Muslimatics. Well, I'm Muslim automatic. You know what I'm saying? The deen is my way of life, my nature. So they got a little clothing brand, Muslimatic. I purchased with them. They use some of the proceeds, of course, to feed themselves, but also to help take these brothers, these youth, to dinners, fun little things in the masjid, and they trying to get them to Rwanda. So I remember a time I did buy a shirt, and it had the one finger on it, had Tawheed is unity, and I was just buying it based off of supporting the Muslims that was selling it. You know what I'm saying? Tawheed is unity, which they basically were saying the one finger brings us all, we unifying under one. You know what I'm saying? But I wasn't taking it like this is a symbolism, this, that, and the third, because like I said, for years I've been always knowing that was something that's a hand gesture that ties you to now what is known as ISIS. And like I said, with me being out of town, that was the first. I used to see brothers come home from the joint, and they would be doing it, but I never really asked them anything about it. I just never took to it. And this was like when I was ignorant, like before, when I was a gang Muslim. And like I said, it wasn't until I was out of town and I seen where a person came in and taking shahada. And yes, some of the people who had the masjid, they was from a community that affiliated themselves with Bilal. They wasn't using the name Bilal. They was using their name, what it was, but so they told him he had to hold his hand up when he take his shahada. He didn't know whether he come in. He didn't know. So when I seen them tell him he had to do that, and I was like, oh man, these people might be affiliated with some terrorism. You know what I'm saying? But I'm looking at him. So when they tell him he got to do that when he take his shahada, and yeah, after he took his shahada, not all of them, but some of them held their finger up and they was yelling, Takbir, Allahu Akbar, Takbir, Allahu Akbar. And at that moment, I looked at the person who I was out of town with like, why we in this masjid? That was my, man, where you done brought me in? You know what I'm saying? But as everything dispersed and died down, there was some individuals in there that was on the hop. And you know, they was kind of in that masjid by force. It wasn't like a lot of masjids, you know, and they went there, they just really prayed in there, and they associated with the brothers, but they didn't go there for knowledge. Like, they didn't sit in none of what they referred to as taleems. You know what I'm saying? And I remember, you know, me talking to another brother about using that term and where did it come from for him, because I never seen it in Arabic or anything like that. And he was saying, well, don't it mean this and that? And I was like, you know, I don't know, not that I know of, because it wasn't an Arabic word that stuck out to me. And when me and him left, when we left from that conversation, I went and looked it up, because I knew when you start to use that term like Talim and stuff like that, certain people of knowledge, they're going to associate you with that community that attaches themselves to Bilal. So I went and looked it up and seen that it was an Urdu word. And this is something that they done picked up from the Tablighi Jamaat. And it basically do mean like studying, you know, if you want to, you could translate it to a classroom. But it was more like studying or learning. But it was an Urdu word, and then I seen the Tablighi Jamaat throw it around, and I knew how I'm just going to say it, the Wardeen community was attached to the Tablighi Jamaat. So they started using this term, Talim, and they did it instead of Jumar, they had Talims. So it's just one of those things, man, that what it attaches you to and associates you to. Now, so, you know, like, I'll say this, I'm going to be honest, because this is just me, and maybe there's something that's going to change about me. But if I'm in a city somewhere and I'm with some brothers and they saying, hey man, the brothers having a talim at the masjid, you want to go? I'm automatically going to say, nah man, I'm cool. Just because they use the word talim. I could have possibly stepped up in there and heard something that was nice. But because what talim means to me and who it's affiliated with and how it's associated, nah man, I'm cool. You know what I'm saying? Or the person, if the person who call themselves doing the teaching and things like that, and they calling it a talim, man, I'm having a talim. I'm going to be doing the talims. I'm holding the talims down. And see, like I said, I was always hearing the brothers here coming home from the joint talking about talims, and then the Wardeen community was here before they masjid was taken over. They were like, yeah, man, they having a talim down there. And then some of the people would tell me what they was talking about in them. I'm like, but none of them could really say what talim actually meant. Like, man, that's just what we call the classes. Alright. Y'all can count me out. You know what I'm saying? Y'all can count me out. So, like, even this, and I'm finna close on this, man, because I gotta take care of some business. As y'all can see, I'm in all white today. I don't really wear my white throws like that unless there's something going on. And it's bothering me. I'm going to need to flatten this. I'm going to need to flatten that. Keep moving. But anyway, something else that's starting to be in the black culture in Illinois is when they salam each other. Well, I know where this came from. Same way like this. This right here came from gang culture. Now, that one, when we went to Jumar, right? When we went to Jumar yesterday, that other one African American that came in, when he walked through the door, he looked directly at me and did like this. He didn't say no words. He didn't say assalamu alaikum. He was like this. That told me two things automatically. He been to prison. He done got a lot of his Islam from prison, or he a vice lord or stone or something under that, a four-corner hustler. He's something up under that, or a combination of all of it. You know what I'm saying? It's one of the two. And I haven't sat down and chopped it up with him, Because we got that bad. And to the point where I used to see them tell brothers, and I done did videos about it. Hey, when you say, man, you know, when you say salam alaikum, you got to do this. Because this right here, you touching your heart, it means love. I'm showing you some love. And that's what they would tell people who wasn't vice lords or stones, this and that. Or some of them would just come around, or they seen them doing it so much in the joint, they just did it. Or somebody say, hey, when you salam people, when you salam the brothers, do this. Because see, in Illinois, brothers, so like in the gang culture, you have one side who refer to themselves as peoples, and then you have one side that refer to themselves as folks. They folks, we peoples. So like some of the young people, when they hearing them say phonem is basically a short verb of folks, but generally it's referring to somebody that was folks that's no longer alive anymore. So they not saying folk, because sometimes the four kind of hustlers say four, so they be like on the four. So some people mix them up, but some of them not. They not technically not. They not saying the exact same words. So I'm mentioning that because on the side who call themselves as peoples, they refer to their gang as the brothers. So when they were, a lot of them, because being a Muslim is from that gang. To be in that gang, you got to be Muslim. To be a vice lord, stone, you supposed to be Muslim back in the day. And if you went to the prison and you wasn't standing on your Islam, they will violate you. At least their version of Islam. Now on the street, like, you ain't got to go to Jumu'ah, you ain't got to do none of that, you ain't got to pray 5 times, but you got to believe that Allah is God. And if they catch you eating some pork, you gonna read some knuckles. Unless you have some rank, unless you was in a very bad situation. So I'm saying that to say they refer to themselves as the brothers. So some of these people who didn't know that literature, who wasn't from that gang, they would teach them, when you see the brothers, you salam like this. And they just started doing it. And I see the way it spread through the African American community. And that's kind of like one of these things. This done came from somewhere else, and now it's starting to be a major symbolism of, now it's done turned into, this is a symbolism of Tawheed. This is a symbolism of the Shahada. This is a symbolism of when you testifying to something, you got to hold your one finger up. But you can't find where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught any of that. So I'm not going to do it. It's not Islam to me. But have at it. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, I ain't going to love you or hate you based off of it. Until you start to tell me I have to do it, and that is from Islam. And then we're going to enter a different conversation. You got to prove that to me, Sheikh. You got to prove that to me without any reasonable doubt. You know what I'm saying? If you want to call it recommended, mustahab, this, that, and the third, you got to prove it to me, B. Other than that, that's a batil. So, like, if you ain't adding a ruling on it saying that it's mandatory or this and that, then at that point, that's some batil, B. That's just some batil. I don't care who prettied it up. It's batil. But once you start to add different rulings and this and that, now you done introduce something new into the religion. And that's a bid'ah. It's not necessarily a bid'ah that takes you out of the fold of Islam. Because like they say, bid'ah is of mainly 2 types. Bid'ah that doesn't take you out of the fold of Islam, and bid'ah that does take you out of the fold of Islam. You understand? In the Sharia. But Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And for you one finger brothers, I ain't got nothing but love for you. Until you start to turn that into something that has to be done from Islam. And I'm still not going to hate you on it. Hey, man, that's some batil. You on some bid'ah, B. That ruling, you on some bid'ah in belief and batil in action. You know what I'm saying? And just respectfully, if that's your belief that it had to be done, just do it with other people. Leave that out of our relationship. You know what I'm saying? Leave that out of our relationship. You know what I'm saying? The 5%ers do it because they have the supreme mathematics, and one means knowledge. So like a lot of times when you used to hear the rappers who come from that 5% background, and they would be saying one in their raps, it means knowledge. So some of them do that as one for the supreme mathematics. So just depending on who you ask, and like I said, it could be a character. This is my favorite team. Could be a boxer. I'm the best. I'm the number one. To me, Islamically, it don't mean nothing in Islam to me. It don't mean nothing. Period. Hands down, it's just something you doing to me. You understand? Just like this. That don't mean nothing to me. That don't mean, hey, this is love. Assalamu alaikum, I'm showing you love. That don't mean nothing. It just means you touched your chest. To me, it just means you holding up one finger for whatever reason. That's all it means to me in Islam. You understand? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And I'm not trying to offend anybody. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, even to each their own. You know what I'm saying? It be kind of, I ain't gonna lie, they do be kind of comical to me. Cause when they be doing it, and like sometimes, like I'm telling you, sometimes like I see some of them, like even like at Ramadan dinners before they eat, and they'll do this and make they dua. You know what I'm saying? They'll be like this, and then they'll make they dua. Even some of the people who still wiping their face and they'll do this and they still doing this and all that. I need to get it together, say. But I'm telling you, I done seen some of them cats. You know what I'm saying? And then like one of them, like the same dude who was doing this and that, who I say he one finger guys. This is sometimes how I used to, he was a telltale, and some of them, because they feel like this is a testimony, this is shahada. So when they telling the truth, and they might not necessarily want to say, wallahi, this was a symbol of that this is my testimony, I'm telling the truth. So sometimes they was talking about something and they didn't do it, I look at him and say he lying. Because if he was really being truthful, to him it means he got to do this. So when he get to trying to talk and telling some type of story and he not doing this, I'll be like, he lying. You know what I'm saying? Because this means the truthful, this a testimony, this shahada, this tawheed. Man, get out of here, man. That means you holding up one finger. No ifs, ands, buts, or maybes. That's all that means. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi. Until, like I said, until somebody could show me some hadith, some athar, and we can go from there. I'm open for it. Please. Please show it to me. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.